Hey everybody, this is Rich. This is part of the Virtuacon 2015, which is an online convention that's going on right now. This is October 24th when we record. Tonight and also most of tomorrow, which is Sunday the 25th of October, there are games, and I know there are a few more panels that are coming up as well, because I'll be moderating one of them. And so there's lots of things to do. Check out RPG Geek or join the Virtuacon Google Plus community if you want to find out more about Virtuacon. I am honored to have on for a one-on-one interview from Bully Pulpit Games, the guest of honor for Virtuacon 2015, none other than Jason Morningstar. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing good. I'm reaching you from my Vostok space capsule today.
Oh man, that's awesome! I knew that the internet was vast.
It's got a really long reach, both in time and in space.
That's so cool. I love that you've ratcheted it down to the seat so that we don't have to worry about gravity or.
Not an issue.
Fantastic.
How are you, Rich?
I'm very good. This has been a great Virtuacon. I love the panel that you just moderated, Small Games That Need More Love. I humble brag, like there were a bunch of those games on there that I'm like, yeah, played that.
That feels good, doesn't it? You're like, it doesn't need more love from me. I've already loved that game.
Loved it and left it.
That's right. That's how it works.
That's cool. You had a great panel of guests, and so thanks for hosting that. That was really awesome.
Yeah.
So let's. I wanted to get to know you, Jason. I know we've always talked like Cannon Puncture and Indie Plus and everything. We always talk about like game projects or the heated issues of the moment. But I've always found your games and your creativity and your interactivity with the community of people in this hobby to be really fascinating. So, first of all, when you are designing games, Jason, like, what do you do for a living? Where do you come from?
Sure. Where do I come from? That's a big question. So I work in IT. I maintain the front end for a school of nursing here in North Carolina where I live. So I do web development and sort of I'm just a IT jack of all trades. That's my day job. That's what I do. That's a question I often get. People are like, well, it must be amazing to make your living making games. And I just want to disabuse you of that notion. I do not. And very few people do. So that's my job. And where do I come from? I don't know. I grew up in Michigan, so I'm kind of a Yankee, I guess. I spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest, and then I ended up in North Carolina, where I went to graduate school. I married a North Carolina girl who's never going to leave. So here we are. We're in North Carolina for the long haul, I think, and it's a nice place to be. I'm happy to be here.
Now, the first time that I ever became kind of aware of Jason Morningstar was with the Durham 3 podcast.
Uh-huh.
So how did you meet Remy and Clinton? Was that during college, or how did you guys?
No, I met them at a convention, actually, a local convention in High Point. We were all there, and I knew about Clinton because he had published a bunch of great games. I was actually playing his games at the time. So I was excited to meet him, and Remy was just another dude who was there, and we all lived in the same town and really hit it off and decided, well, we should play together. And it just, for whatever reason, it just really worked out. We were a really good trio, and then when we started inviting other people to make it up for people, it worked really well. The dynamic didn't change too much, so it was just a good group, and we really love each other, and still do, and Clinton and I still game together every week. Remy now lives in Atlanta, so he doesn't, but yeah, we're still close friends.
That's great. So the structure of Durham 3, and by the way, back when Durham 3 first came out from RPG Podcast, I think there were just like a tiny little handful of them. This one was Sons of Cryos, and Have Games Will Travel was out. And then all of a sudden, here's Durham 3. And you guys had a really particular approach to how you did each of the episodes. You kind of started off with a subject, then you ran off a game, and then you talked afterwards.
And when we didn't record the game, right? So you would hear us talk about, hey, we're excited to play Contenders tonight. And then we're back. We just played Contenders. And that's sort of how it was structured.
Yes, I love that structure. Who came up with it?
I don't know. Maybe Remy. It may have been his idea. He was sort of the audio guy. He's the guy who sort of formatted and edited and everything. And it was probably his idea. I don't honestly remember. But I like that too. When we all agreed that we didn't want to make an actual play recording of us playing the game with certain exceptions. But for the most part, we wanted to talk about the games, but we didn't want to necessarily give a play-by-play of what we did, or our performance. And I think that was a really good format because it made it really punchy. The episodes were short, and our enthusiasm could be easily communicated.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I loved about Durham 3 is that there was so much enthusiasm for the games. In fact, I don't recall an episode where you guys really badmouthed the game that you were playing. Was there a reason for that? Was that a choice, or did you just have a lot of great luck?
No. We played some games that didn't work real well, and we just didn't talk about them because I don't think that serves anybody. If we're positive, we can share a positive experience and get other people excited about things we love. I don't really see any percentage, and I still don't, in talking about things that I don't like. You can find that out on your own, or you can ask me in person, and I'll be glad to talk about things I don't like. But if I'm going to share it with the world, I want to share a very positive message about things that I love and that other people might love too. And that's just where we were. And so, yeah, we had games that failed occasionally, not much because we chose well, and we all had really good chemistry. So it was pretty rare that we started the game and we're like, oh, this is not working out. But it occasionally happened. For everybody, right? I mean, that's not unique, I think. I don't know any group that has 100% track record.
Gosh, I'd like to meet them.
I know. Those guys are fantastic. The people who never have a bad game.
Let me ask you a question. How many of those games were new to you, Jason? Were these games that you were kind of bringing back to the table, or were you guys pioneering in new stuff?
You're talking about the Durham 3?
Yeah, the games that you're playing then.
It's always new. There were very, very few of those games that we brought to the table that we had a lot of experience with. They were usually new.
How much of those games and that experience in Durham 3 do you think influenced you as far as becoming a designer or continuing to be a designer?
Yeah, well, I think it's important. Like I, as a game designer, it's important for me to play all kinds of things and sort of be omnivorous in my consumption of other people's ideas and techniques. So, yes, it's hugely influential, and also playing with really skilled people who are getting the most out of those games. It was important too. So, yeah, it was very, very helpful and influential, and still is. I still love playing with those guys when I get a chance.
Fantastic. Yeah, I got an opportunity to play with Clinton at one of Camp Nerdly's. He ran Beyond the Wall.
Oh, yeah.
For my son primarily, like for the kids, but I got to kind of sit over his shoulder and help out. That was fun. So there's a question actually from the audience that I definitely want to seed in. Dave Bernazzani asked, first of all, he says, awesome to see all the books in the background because he doesn't realize Print's dead. He said, those don't look like RPGs, though. What kind of books are on your shelves?
Oh, thanks, Dave. There's all kinds of stuff on my shelf. And if you want to see, I wonder if I can move my camera to show you my RPG shelf. Do you want me to try?
Do it. Right. But show us your non-RPGs too, Jason.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So this is all our books. This is my wife's books and mine. And we have very different interests, although similar tastes. So I don't know if I can do this. Give me a second here. Is this a good use of our time, Rich?
It's a great use of our time.
Okay. All right. So here's the camera. And my room is kind of a disaster here. So over there we have film history, and below film history we have some cookbooks and technical books. Let's see. I don't think you're going to be able to tell what's going on. This is history. All my history books, and below that we've got big books that don't fit anywhere else, including big books. The top shelf is medical stuff, like Tabor's Medical Encyclopedia. There's some Russian food from the Second World War. These books, there's more medical stuff. Comic books. There's my New York City Transit Authority style guide. There's a wrestling poster, and then let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry, the camera's not working too. This is those shelves you're looking at right there. That is the sum total of all my role-playing books. That's it. Those 2 shelves. That's all I got. I don't know what to say about that.
How come?
I don't buy them unless I'm going to play them, and so that limits my my collection quite a bit.
Do you recycle a lot of games?
Yeah, I do. And right now we're playing this in my local group, Clinton and I. So that's up front here, Monster Hearts. I'm playing a Selkie and having a good time with that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tour of your bookshelf.
Sure.
Cool. So, the New York Transit Authority Style Guide.
Yeah.
Why did you get that book?
Well, it's a beautiful object. And it's fascinating from a sort of historical point of view, and from the point of view of visual information, which really interests me, and graphic design, which is an interest of mine as well. So, kind of came together, and I couldn't resist.
Very cool. I heard a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of history. I don't know that I don't accrue historical books too much, but the ones that I have are ones that I really care about. Like I do try to keep the books on my shelf to ones that I really love, and we massively weed every once in a while to get rid of books that we no longer love or no longer need or have access to in some other format. So like I've got Barbara Tuchman up there, I've got A Distant Mirror, I've got Robert Hughes, William Shire's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, books like that I'm just, I really want to have. There's some Alaska-specific books that are really hard to get that I have from my time when I lived there. It's like some stuff like that. I've got some Soviet-era propaganda books that were designed for the West that are published in English, children's books and stuff that are just hard to acquire and really interesting artifacts of history. So
anyone who follows you on Google Plus is already aware that you love finding tidbits and nuggets from history, that you're a real lover of world history. What is it that most appeals to you? Like, is there a particular time period, or is there a particular kind of story? What is it that most appeals to you about history?
I don't know. I see the sort of human drama in almost any history. I can find really interesting things to dig into. So like yesterday I was reading about Halley's Comet and when it came in 1910 and all the stuff that happened then. And so thinking about 1910, sort of the late Edwardian era was endlessly fascinating. And if you just talk to people, that's not an era that most people are interested in, but I can make it interesting. And that's exciting to me. So yeah, there are certain times and places that I'm more interested in than others, and you see that reflected in my game enthusiasms, I think.
What's the purpose for you to create a historical RPG? Like, what are your main goals when you decide to make things like Grey Ranks or Night Witches?
Sure. So Dave is asking a question about PDFs or digital RPGs, and I don't. Yeah. I don't like them. I don't use them. I can't use them at the table. It's not my preferred format. I'm not a fan. I prefer something that's tactile that I can actually reference and play. So I don't have a ton. I mean, actually, I do have a ton from Kickstarters and things that I've supported where there's a digital product that comes with it, but I've rarely referenced those. Only if that's kind of the only way I can do it. Do I choose that as a format? Like Soth, which is a game that I really like. The only way I could get it really practically was as a PDF. So I did, and that's fine. Okay, so what was your question? Something about why am I prompted to write a historical game?
Yeah, well, what's your goal when you sit down to write a game like Grey Ranks or a game like Night Witches? What's your motivation, and what are you trying to communicate?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on. One is that if I'm captivated by a particular time and place, I really want to share that with people in a way that's meaningful and that will give them some empathy. I think history is wonderful for that. Or gaming and history that you can come away from a game of Night Witches and be like, my God, the things that they did, the things that they suffered, it's incredible. Those women were amazing, in a way that maybe reading about it doesn't, because it's just a little different. So there's that piece of it. Sometimes you can use another time and place as a way of distancing commentary on the contemporary. And sometimes you can use it you can abstract it to still talk about historical lessons without inducing history panic, which is what I try to do with Durance. Durance is about the colonization of Australia, but I knew that if I wrote a game about the colonization of Australia, nobody would touch it. So by putting a science fiction gloss on it, in that case, I'm still telling the same very human story, but in a way that's very approachable. And that has also been pretty successful for me.
Is it your preference to use that veneer of sci-fi or fantasy, or with Night Witches, do you feel more inspired to actually, let's just really do the history?
Yeah, some of it depends on the subject matter and the distance to that. Like I really feel like I needed to sort of honor ground truth in both that and Gray Ranks, because it's kind of 70 years ago. It's close enough. There are still people alive who experienced those things. And by abstracting that, maybe it's a disservice to them. And so that was sort of in my mind a little bit. It's not always the case. I've written games that are about contemporary events that I've also abstracted to make them more approachable. So it's just a decision that you have to make as you start to look at the material that you wanna share. I think can go either way.
We're gonna kind of jump over to more game design process just for a moment. I'm curious, at any given time, say over the last couple of years, how many games do you have in the hopper that you're working? Because I remember back at Gen Con like several years ago that you were working on a medical hospital game. It always kind of bubbles up, and then there's other things that come to the fore. Like, how many games do you have that you're thinking about at any point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. There are lots of games in various stages of development at any one time. There's probably half a dozen that I'm actively thinking about in some capacity. Medical Hospital is kind of my white whale. It's a game that I have a vision for in my head that I haven't been able to really actualize. I've tried a couple of times and it just hasn't worked. So that's still there, and I still want to do it. Maybe 2016 is the year of Medical Hospital. We'll see. I think it's a wonderful idea that would be very popular if I could do it right. But if I can't do it right, I shouldn't do it. So, so that's not a game that I'm thinking about. But it's half done and it's on my hard drive. But there are other games in various states of completion. There are games that are done. I've got, I don't know, I probably have 6 or 8 games that are absolutely finished and done, and that I just haven't figured out how to release yet or done the right thing with them yet. They'll probably be free games that we release as part of some thing with Bully Pulpit Games, probably next February. And then there are a bunch of games that have been partially play tested and that I have feedback for that needs to be implemented, or that are kind of done, kind of not done, that are in various states. So yeah, I'd say there's probably 6 games, and I could name them if you want, but that list changes as time goes on, and some things just sort of fall away half finished and never get finished. Some get finished but never implemented, and some I continue to work on.
Just out of curiosity and to kind of put a stake in the ground, what are those 6 games?
Okay. You want to know what 6 games are highest on my agenda right now?
That's exactly what I want to know.
I'm opening my computer and I'm going to look in my folder. So I've got a game called Cartwheel, which is a live action game about crashing on the moon. That's in active development. I just released a playtest version to some close friends. I've got a game called The Sadistic Torture Pit of Dr. Lunatic, which is a locked room skill-based puzzle game. It's in active development. Let's see, looking down the list. There's a game that is done but that I haven't released. That's just going to be a free little trifle. Ghost Court is a game that is absolutely locked, done, great. It needs a little bit of refinement, and I also need to find an artist for it. But that's going to be great. That's going to my vision for that is actually a boxed card game that you can buy at a game store. So I'm excited about that. There's a game that I'm going to give away. There's a game I'm going to give away. Okay, there's Villa Air Bell, which is a game that is essentially done, but that I don't think I can ever release.
Why?
And I'll just leave it at that. It's got
okay.
It's got stuff in it that I'm not allowed to share. Where is? Oh yeah, and there's a game called The Dream, which has been heavily play tested and needs to be. I need to go in and re-edit it. Like I need to change some things, and then that'll be done. And that's one I'm going to definitely release for sale. It's a short live action game. Okay, and now I'm in the tabletop development folder. What do I got there? Oh my gosh, I've got a Dungeon World adventure that's completely self-contained that is ready to go that I could release anytime. And I say I could release it anytime. I have a company, and so when I say that, I mean that the creative work is done, and the other work would need to be done to actualize it. And we just don't have the bandwidth to do everything all at once. I got another space disaster game that's sort of a tabletop board game hybrid that is in active development. I'm getting some feedback notes on that from John Bolding, hopefully today. John Bolding, if you're watching this, get me your feedback. There's a game called Outlaw Gods, which I've essentially abandoned because I can't get it right. There's a game I'm giving away for free when that time comes. It's about anyway, it's complicated. There's a game I was supposed to work on with John Stavropoulos, but somehow we dropped the plot on that. It's essentially done. A lot of these essentially done things. Oh God! And there's another game about that takes place in northern Serbia in 1944. That's kind of a super hardcore game that needs to be play tested. I've written it. It's done, but it needs play testing. Is that good?
That is great.
Give you an idea?
That's cool.
Right.
I love that little peek behind the wall.
Well, those are all in various states of completion. Some of them are absolutely locked. Some are done but need to be sent to a graphic designer or an artist. Some of them are just sitting in limbo. I don't know. I missed a couple. There's a game where you play a lost dog called Lost Dog Reward, and you're a dog, and you have to find people who will take care of you, and you have to take care of them, and it's for kids, and I think it's pretty cool. That game is done, but I haven't been able to finish it. So, okay, what's next on your agenda, Rich? I'm done talking about my half-assed, half-finished games, which no one is ever going to see.
I love it. Now, 2 years down the road, when a few of these come out, somebody will be like, I remember the time when Jason mentioned that on Virtuacon interview. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I love it. So you mentioned Bully Pulpit, and I did, we introduced you as from Bully Pulpit. That's not just you. Now, how did Bully Pulpit come to be? And why did you need Bully Pulpit versus just releasing the stuff on your own?
Well, I guess I could have. This was back in 2005, I think, and I had entered the Chabelle Hiri Roach into Game Chef, and it, it didn't win or really place or show, but it was well received, and Ron Edwards in particular sort of took it as a given that I was going to publish it, and he spoke to me with that expectation, which was actually really inspiring. He was just like, so when are you putting this out in the world? This is a great game. And I didn't have a good answer for him. And so I talked to some of my friends, Steve Seghetti, who is my partner in Bully Pulpit Games, and another guy named Patrick Murphy, who was with that company when we started. And we said, well, why not? Let's do it. We have all these tools. There's a production forum in the Forge that's people just sharing skills and sharing ideas about printers and formats and layout. There's no reason we can't do this. And so we formed a company, and that's how it started. So, yeah, that's the origin of Bully Pulpit Games, was specifically to publish the Chabelle Hiri Roach. And once we had done that, we're like, wow, we can do this. This is not super hard. And our expectations for recouping our investment were really naive. We had printed 100 copies of that game, and incurred some financial risk there because it was our money that we were putting into this, not knowing if we'd get it back. And we got it back in 48 hours. our investment was done in 48 hours, and those books sold within 2 weeks or something. So we knew that we could do this successfully without endangering our finances, and that's how we went forward.
I have to ask, you mentioned Chabal Roach, and this is probably more for Jason Cordova than anybody, but have you ever thought about going back to that based off playtest feedback and your development as a designer?
Oh yeah, I look at that game now and I'm like, wow, I made some pretty bad mistakes. Yes, that is an active conversation that we're having. We're trying to figure out how to do it. We would love to do not a revision, but to take sort of that idea, which is a lovely setting and so forth, and make a more functional game out of it. And my vision for it is like a kind of like a quasi role-playing card game, like in the lines of Gloom or Once Upon a Time. Steve has a little bit of a different idea, so we're not exactly sure where that's going to go, but it's definitely on our agenda to revise that, revamp it, make it more modern and more fun, more playable.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's playable. Lots of people played it. That makes it playable, right?
Oh yeah. But it shows its age. It shows my my lack of skill as a designer. So yeah, we'll make it better. Jason Cordova, I'm going to do it for you, buddy.
Oh, that's great. So talk to me. Oh, wow. I just spaced for a second. I apologize. So we talked about Bully Pulpit, and I appreciate that. One of the questions I had was, as a small press game designer and publisher, what's your approach to speaking to the public? Like, that's got to be a really tricky situation, because one bad blow up and you get a black mark on your name. It's got to be intimidating. What's the best way to kind of handle that as a small time publisher?
Oh, I don't think there is a single best way. Like, different people have different approaches.
How do you handle it?
Yeah, for me, I really believe, and this is in life, or I try to do this in life as well as sort of in my public persona, but I really believe in communicating positivity, first of all. Like, if there's something that I love and that I find interesting and I'm enthusiastic about, I want to share that. And if there's something that I hate and that I really dislike and that that I can keep that to myself. I'm not adding to the net good of the world by sharing that. And that applies both to ideas and to people, right? Like, I don't want to work with people who are not increasing the net good. I don't want to work with people who have bad ideas or are toxic in some way. I don't even want to interact with them, ultimately. And in my role as a publisher, sometimes I do have to interact with people that are maybe negative or hostile in some way, and they have a right to be, and I understand that. But in my personal life, I absolutely don't tolerate that, and don't surround myself with people who bring that into my life. And that makes things simultaneously much easier and sometimes more bewildering, because I feel like I have a very peaceful social media bubble, because I just don't interact with people who are going to cause a lot of drama or stress for me. And I have lots of friends who, unfortunately, for various reasons, are subjected to that, and I get it secondhand because I just don't see those people. I block them or sent them to the cornfield or whatever, and just don't interact with them. So I believe in being positive. I believe in manifesting that positivity in quiet ways behind the scenes, to use whatever minor influence I have to make things better as a community. And that's been very successful for me. So that's what I do.
Cool. Continuing on that, Jason, you're a big part of the story games community. You've been on Game Chef. You've kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, right? You were a judge on Game Chef 1 year, 2 years?
1 year, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've participated a lot.
That's true. Yes, you certainly have. So you also take part in a lot of panels. And what's the benefit for you from participating in those types of communities versus designing the game?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't do things I don't like. So clearly I enjoy it. It makes me feel good to be a part of that, and to be able to uh, bring things that I care about to the fore and to communicate my enthusiasm and love to a wider audience. I mean, who wouldn't like that? That makes me feel really good. So that's why I do that stuff. There is I guess there's sort of there's a value to me speaking in those fora, because people get to know me or see what I'm about, and then maybe they go and look at my games too. So, that there's that benefit, but I don't really do anything that I don't want to do.
Do you have any words of wisdom for anyone that wants to actively kind of engage in a community or be a leader among a gaming community?
Yeah. Well, my mantra, the thing that I really try to live by, is to listen more than you talk. And I think that's a rare skill, and that the more you do that, the better you will get at understanding other people and empathizing with them and finding ways that you can help them, which leads to the idea of mutualism, which is, I think, how you become a valued member of a community. And I don't know that anyone should aspire to leadership. I think people should do what they're really good at, and they should help others be better at what they're good at. And that's sort of leadership by default without making that a goal. So I think the way to be a part of a community is to participate actively, and the best way to participate is to help others without any expectation of anything in return. And if you approach things in that way, then frequently you'll be really well rewarded. That's been my experience anyway. I understand also. Well, and I should caveat that with that I'm speaking from a position of great privilege at this point. So that needs to be acknowledged too. Okay, go ahead. What was your question?
Well, it's privilege, but I think, at least from a game designer, you earned your stripes, Jason. So you put out a lot of games and you've done a lot of hard work. But there is a particular privilege that I'm curious about. Talk to me about Fiasco being part of the Tabletop Show. How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Well, you're thinking, so just for anybody who isn't aware, and if you aren't aware, seriously, you're missing out on a great show. There's a YouTube show that Will Wheaton hosts, which I kind of describe it to some of my gamer buddies who aren't super active on watching YouTube stuff. It's like Poker Stars, or what are those poker nights type shows with celebrities where they're actively playing a tabletop game, and then there's little asides where they have confessionals and stuff like that. It's super fun. Lots of cool kind of B-list, C-list celebrities that come on and play games. And Fiasco was one of the first RPGs, along with the Dragon Age RPG, that was featured on a tabletop episode. So talk to me, how did that happen, Jason?
I mean, I think Will, he picks games that he likes and that he's enjoyed. And so I'm really fortunate that we have some mutual friends who had exposed him to it. And so he played it and liked it and realized that it was probably a good choice. So Boyan Radkovich just sort of cold called us and said, "Are you interested in this? Do you want to be a part of it?" And we said yes. And that's how it started. And then there was a little bit of work on our part to sort of package some materials for the show and to make sure that it was accessible to them. And then they just ran with it. There was not a lot of input from us once they had sort of gotten the approval to do it.
I have to say, personally, it's one of my favorite representations of an RPG.
Yeah, they did a great job in having the sort of the skilled staff to do sort of the graphics representations of how things work in the game. It was really, really nice. I thought they did a nice job with it, and the way they differentiate in character and out of character. I thought that was very successful. They didn't get all the rules quite right, but that's okay.
How'd that make you feel? Like, when you were watching it, you're like, oh, that isn't how it goes. What were your thoughts?
If I were running a demo of Fiasco at a convention, I would not use all the rules, or maybe I would bend things to make it more interesting in a 20-minute spot. And they're doing the same thing. It's if they get something wrong, you might get something wrong when you play at home too. I wasn't too worried about it. And I think they communicated the core of the experience. And most of all, it was clear that they were really enjoying it. And that's going to sell it more than anything. So, I wasn't too worried that they didn't quite get the tilt right, or that they assigned the dice in weird ways. It was fine. I'm very, very happy that they did it, and I was really proud to see it.
Speaking of selling the game, what were the after effects? What was the long tail after that episode came out?
Well, I think what I learned anyway, and what Tabletop learned, is that their audience are pretty much board game people. We did see a slight bump in sales, but it wasn't as dramatic as we had prepared for.
Oh, interesting.
No, which is fine. I mean, it was we reordered in advance, and we reordered a lot of books in anticipation of just a deluge, and there wasn't really a deluge. There was just sort of a spike. It wasn't enormous. You should talk to Steve about that. Steve Seghetti, my partner, who has a better handle on that and would have the numbers and so forth. Oh, okay. I'm absolutely glad that they did it, and it certainly had a net positive effect. And certainly the long tail effect is that we can point people to that, and it's basically the best produced demo for the game that you can imagine. So it works out great. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. So I'm going to kind of jump back to the RPG design again. You mentioned, we let off with talking about your stuff that's in the hopper. The first thing you talked about was your live action. And I've noticed that you've had a few things trickled out. What is the development, or what's the interest level for you from moving from tabletop to more of a live action, LARP, Jeep form, American free form, that kind of experience? What most entices you about those kind of games?
Well, I would encourage your viewers who haven't tried a live action game to give it a shot, because it is kind of a revelation if you're a tabletop player to suddenly introduce basically like kinesthetics into your game. When you play a character, adding movement and to that, it's the simplest thing in the world, but it changes everything. Suddenly you're carrying yourself different, and you get insights into your character that you don't necessarily get sitting down. And that was surprising to me and exciting. I found it really, really compelling. So that led to a lot of exploration, and now I'm pretty deep into it. I'm sort of building a body of work that's using techniques that I learned in tabletop, but bringing in the sort of externalities of live action play in a combination it's been great. I've made some games that I really, really like and that are extremely fun to play. And there's more of those coming. And also I think I'm doing things that are somewhat unique, which is also pretty exciting.
If you had to recommend one game for somebody to try who's interested in trying LARP, tell me one game, and then tell me a game that you've put out that you would recommend.
Sure. Well, a lot of it depends on your circumstances, because there's some really great live action games that take a dozen people and 6 or 8 hours. And if you got that, then wow, that's great. If you only have a couple of hours and 6 people, then that limits things a little bit. And I have to say, that's the space that I'm operating in. I'm really interested in designing games that I can play. And if I'm going to play it, it's got to be 2 hours long, and it's got to be for 6 people or less, because that's just my world. That's where I live. And so games that I would recommend, I can of course recommend my own, because they that's half of it. They hit those sweet spots pretty well. So I've got a game that is available for purchase called The Climb. It's 6 people. You're mountaineers on a mountain, making a legal ascent on a mountain, and making very difficult choices about who's going to get to the summit and who's not, and what's going to happen. And it's really, it splits the difference between tabletop and live action play in a way that's usually pretty comfortable for people who are new to it. So that's a good one for people who are new that I would definitely recommend.
Cool. Awesome. Well, So we were kind of coming nearer to the end of the hour, and I understand you might have some stuff that's coming up in the future that you can talk about.
You know me too well.
That's right.
I can't believe you're putting me on the spot like this.
I am totally putting on my resources and ninjas have found that there might be things that you would want to talk about. So what's the future for games coming from Bully Pulpit?
Well, here's something that we are going to do that we haven't announced yet. This is the first formal announcement of this. So coming up, probably at the end of this year, we are going to be producing bound collections of our playsets of the month. So for 3 years, we did playsets of the month. So that's like 36 playsets that were really well designed, playtested, vetted, and published by various people. And those are going to appear in bound collections. There's 3 of them. And each of them also includes a new unreleased playset from me, all of which are extraordinary. So 13 playsets in 3 volumes. With introductions by luminaries like Kelly Sue McConaughey and Matt Fraction and Curtis Wiebe, and with brand new covers by John Harper that actually form a triptych if you lay them out. So they're going to be really nice, really cool volumes, and that's coming fairly soon. And we haven't talked about that at all. So you're the first to hear about it, Rich.
Virtuacon is the first to hear about this big scoop. That is fantastic.
It is definitely a scoop for you guys.
Awesome. That is so cool.
I know. I'm really excited. And I think it's going to be a very convenient thing to have. You know, you can have it on the table and use it to actually play. And the new stuff in it is great. The forwards are all hilarious. And the new play sets that I put in there are really good ones. So.
What's the form factor? Is it the same form factor as Fiasco and the
It'll sit on the shelf right next to them, 6x9, same format.
Nice. That sounds good. And a soft cover, hardbound.
There's soft covers.
Nice.
And we're just going to release them. There's not going to be a Kickstarter, nothing fancy.
Why not? I'm curious. Why have you done a Kickstarter? I don't think Bully Pulpit's ever done one. Why not?
We've done a number of Kickstarters, Rich.
What? I'm ignorant.
It's all right. We kickstarted Durham. We kickstarted the Warren. So yeah, we've done 3, I think. But anyway, this just seemed like a project that we could iterate it pretty rapidly. And since the bulk of it is stuff that is freely available, it just didn't seem like the timing was right or the impulse was right to kickstart it. So
I'm such a doof. I even backed the Warren for hardcover. So
I got nothing. I can't explain it for you. The Warren, by the way, is almost ready to go to print. That
is so cool. Hey. So are there any other games, like, Marshall Miller had the Warren, and this was a game that had existed for a bit, and then are there any other game designers or game designs that you're working on within Bully Pulpit that's not directly coming from you, Jason?
Not right now. There are some discussions, but yeah, not in the immediate future.
Cool. And it's just a project that really inspires you or something you feel like you could help foster to come to fruition? Are there any other?
Yeah, well, the Warren, I mean, it was like a perfect storm. It was a really good game that Marshall had written, and that it was pretty clear that he lacked the infrastructure to go forward with. And it just hit a deep and abiding love that both Steve and I had. So it was just, there's no way we could not do that. That's where that came from.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, any other, I'm going to dig. I'm going to claw more. Are there any other future projects, or is the Fiasco kind of the big one on the horizon right now?
Well, so yeah, the Fiasco anthology, the 3-volume anthology, the Warren will be coming out very soon, and we'll be supporting that. So those are our big things coming up, and we're still kind of trying to figure out how to structure what's going to happen in 2016. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Hey, thanks for sharing. That's really cool. Well, Jason, we're almost up to the hour here, and do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, actually, yes, I do. Let me see if I can get it. It's up right on my shelf here. I'm super excited about this. So we recently got our comp copies of the Korean edition of both Fiasco and the Fiasco Companion. Wow. Which is great. and it's really beautiful. And our partner in Korea did a wonderful job, and I'm really proud of it. And I hope all of your Korean viewers will go out and snap this up. Sound good?
That is very cool. That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
Oh, that was good.
All right.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time to talk about you and your games.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to do it. I think I said more than I planned on, which is always good.
Yeah, so Virtuacon, we worked this out. It was good stuff. Glad it worked out. Cool. So again, this is going to be on my YouTube channel, but it's definitely part of Virtuacon. If you are itching to play some games, first thing you can do is right this second you could jump into the Tavern, which is an ongoing hangout. It goes for the entirety of Virtuacon, which is all of tonight if you're watching this live, as well as most of tomorrow, which is the 25th of October 2015. And
how do we get to the Tavern? How do we get there?
How do you get to the Tavern? That's a great question. So the #1 way to do that is to go to Google Plus and join the Virtuacon community, and then that's listed in the events. The other way that you can do it is go to rpggeek.com, which are the hosts of Virtuacon, the hardworking men and women and all the folks who are a big part of making this thing happen. And it's free. It's free of charge. Just come and play some games with some cool people across the world. There's games at 2 a.m. I looked and there was like a 5th Ed D&D game. I haven't played 5th Ed D&D yet, Jason. I want to play.
What's the matter with you? I played like 8 sessions of it.
You are omnivorous. I'm incredibly picky. That's me.
What can I tell you, man?
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Jason. You have a fantastic afternoon. Thanks for being a guest of honor from Virtuacon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Rich.